What is happening, baby? Welcome back to the Huddle Chat Sports Network's very own Fantasy Football Huddle. Presented, as always, by DanklyfeBrand and Let's Talk Sports, as well as Shank It Golf Brand. Now, like I said in my previous episodes, it's been a rough couple of weeks, and I took a week off last week just for my own health, mental health, different things like that. But we're back better, harder, hotter, and stronger than we have been all season long. So I hope you're ready for this second half of the season takeover, because whether you're at the beginning, at the top of the list when you look at your standings, or you're down there at the very bottom, I know right now we're in the meat and potatoes of the fantasy football season, and every win, especially right now, really fucking matters. I know that in my main home league, my most important, most competitive league, right now it's a 6-way tie for first place. 6 different 4-3 teams, 3 different 3-4 teams behind it. It's an absolute clusterfuck right now. And I know a ton of leagues are like that, unless you're 0-6. And even if you're 0-6, you still got a slight chance. 0-7, maybe not. I don't know. It depends on how competitive your league is right now. However, right now, this next 2, 3, 4 weeks is going to be the most important for your push to be where you want to be, whether you're competing for the bye week, whether you're competing for the playoffs, or whether you're competing just to not be last place. Right now is going to be that important time. So we're going to give you all the players that you need to consider in your starters and sims this week. Of course, we don't go over the top 10, top 24 in some positions, those must-start players. So we're going to be talking about those players that are kind of on the borderline. Do I start them or not? Basically, when you're asking those questions, I'm going to help you out with that today. So without further ado, fill up your cups, roll something up, and let's get right into the startums and situms for week 8 of the 2023 fantasy football season, starting with the quarterbacks like we always do. Start of the week quarterback is going to be Jared Goff against the Las Vegas Raiders. Last week was a tough game for Jared Goff. He played the Ravens, a tough matchup at Baltimore, which he doesn't do as well on the road as he does in Ford Field. He's back at Ford Field this week, where he's put up 17 plus in 10 of his last 12, where he's put up 7 games in that 12-game span of 20 or more. Jared Goff at home on Monday Night Football in primetime. I love it this week. I'm also liking to start Trevor Lawrence against Pittsburgh. He's playing a vulnerable Pittsburgh defense where his wide receivers really could take advantage. He's also coming off his best fantasy football game of 2023. Trevor Lawrence is definitely a quarterback worth starting this week. I'm also looking to start Dak Prescott, another quarterback that's coming off his best game of the season so far in a fantasy football points perspective. They're playing the Rams, and the Rams have allowed 27 plus in 2 of their last 4 games. It's a potential high-scoring affair, potential shootout, and you know the Cowboys, they have that curse where they play to the level of their competition, and this Rams offense has been kind of shooting on all cylinders since Cooper Kupp got back in the lineup. So look for Dak Prescott to put up some numbers this week. I also like CJ Stroud against Carolina. Carolina's allowing 22 plus in each of their last 2 games. Also looking at them dealing with some injuries. Plus the Texans are finally getting some health back into their offensive line. CJ Stroud is still playing damn good football, especially in the real life aspect position. But when we're talking fantasy, he's not putting up crazy numbers, but he's been consistent enough to be a Band-Aid in a pinch. So I like CJ Stroud against Carolina. Some other quarterbacks that I'd like to start this week, Jordan Love against Minnesota, Brock Purdy versus Cincinnati, and then Derek Carr versus the Indianapolis Colts. I'm liking to start all those quarterbacks. My sit of the week at quarterback is going to be Russell the Love Muscle, Russell Wilson for the Denver Broncos against the Kansas City Chiefs. He's going through a slump in these last couple of games, and Kansas City is allowing the 4th fewest points per game to quarterback. They held Russell Wilson to less than 7 points a few weeks back. So I definitely just don't like the matchup for Russell Wilson this week. He's a definite high risk, low reward option. Somebody you can start if you have to, but there's got to be a better option. I'm also going to be trying to sit Kirk Cousins against Green Bay if I can this week. Green Bay has only allowed 2 quarterbacks since last year. 2 quarterbacks since the beginning of last year, when they play in Lambeau, have been scored more than 12.5 points against the Packers. They've been really good at home, and it's a divisional slugfest like you always see in the NFC North. So I don't think it's going to be a crazy high-scoring game. I think Kirk Cousins is going to have his fair share of struggles, and I think right now I just don't like starting Kirk Cousins this week. I'm also going to be staying away from Matt Stafford. He's been very average this season, and the Cowboys are allowing the 5th fewest points per game to quarterbacks. I'm also going to be sitting Geno Smith. I mean, let's just face it. He is who we thought he was. The real Geno Smith is back, and Cleveland is a bad matchup. I don't like Geno Smith this week. I don't like Geno Smith a lot this year. So stay away from him this week. I'm also staying away from Baker Mayfield, Mac Jones, and Joshua Dobbs from the Arizona Cardinals. Just a few quarterbacks to stay away from this week. Now, moving on to the tight ends, we're going to be looking at Sam Laporta, who's been very solid. He's playing the Las Vegas Raiders, who have been decent against, kind of middle of the road against tight ends. And he plays better at home, just like Jared Goff does as well. So I like Sam Laporta against the Raiders. I also like Dalton Schultz against the Carolina Panthers. This is a good game trend, and it seems real. It doesn't seem like just a trend or just a phase. It seems real. Dalton Schultz seems to be at least a consistent enough player to merit fantasy consideration this season. He's got a touchdown and 13 plus points in each of his last 3 games. And he's playing against the Carolina Panthers, who have been kind of middle of the road against defenses, kind of tough against tight ends. But I think Dalton Schultz, with the numbers he's been putting up against tough defenses, it's easy to trust him this week. I also like Jake Ferguson. You've heard me toot the Jake Ferguson horn a couple times. He hasn't posted huge totals, but he's getting good volume, and he's got a good matchup against the Los Angeles Rams. I also like Dallas Goedert against the Commanders, Taysom Hill against the Colts, Michael Mayer versus the Lions, and Trey McBride versus the Ravens are all worth consideration this week as well. Tight ends I'm staying away from, Tyler Higbee versus the Cowboys. He's had very little action since Cooper Kupp came into the lineup. You've heard me say before, the targets in this offense go through 2 people, Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. Everybody else is going to kind of get in where they fit in. The Cowboys have only allowed 1 tight end this season, George Kittle, to have a good game against them. I don't think anything looks good for Tyler Higbee this week. I'm staying away from him. I'm also staying away from David Njoku, Corilla DeVille, as I like to call him. He's got a low ceiling with a bad matchup this week. And it's hard to trust Cleveland pass catchers right now with the questions that are going on with Deshaun Watson, with PJ Walker. It's just a lot of questions right now, and I prefer to stay away from it. There's got to be a safer option than David Njoku out there. There's also got to be a safer option than Cole Kmet this week against the Chargers. Not 1 target last week for Cole Kmet with Bagent in the lineup as the starter for the first time. And at the end of the day, he's not Travis Kelce. Only Travis Kelce has really put up a good game against the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, it was such a good game, it's going to make the Chargers look like they're allowing a lot more points to the tight end position than they are. But let's face it, he put up, I think, like 32 fucking points against the Chargers. So that's definitely going to inflate it. And like I said, he's not. Cole Kmet is not Travis Kelce. So we're staying away from him this week. Logan Thomas against the Philadelphia Eagles. 3 of his last 4 games, he's underperformed. And 1 of those 4 games being against Philadelphia in week 4. Coming back, playing Philadelphia again. I just don't like Logan Thomas this week. I'm also staying away from Chiego Okonkwo versus Atlanta, Noah Fant versus Cleveland, and Irv Smith Jr. versus San Francisco. Defenses we're going to be looking at this week. I do like the Eagles defense against the Commanders. I like the Jets defense versus the Giants. I like the Cleveland Browns versus the Seattle Seahawks, the Los Angeles Chargers defense versus the Chicago Bears, and the Detroit Lions defense versus Las Vegas on Monday Night Football. Defenses to avoid, it should be easy to figure out at this point. Pats defense versus Miami, Cincinnati's defense against San Francisco, Tampa Bay at Buffalo, the Rams at Dallas Cowboys, and Minnesota at the Green Bay Packers. Staying away from all of them that I can this week. That's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you all so much for tuning in and continuing to stay loyal to the Huddle Chat Sports Networks. I love y'all so much. Keep your chins up and your attitude down. I'll see y'all next time, and have a good one, baby. Peace out.